say quickly.
I did not hear. Did anyone get what Josanne just said?
No, and we are live now.
Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. We are in the agenda review for the April cycle. And with that, Staff Smith, you can lead us through the process.
All right. I see Josanne Reeves is back from the administration, so we'll let her get back, President Melendez, and then we will get started.
Thank you.
Josanne, we have you back.
Yes, I'm glad I asked to talk and got booted out of the meeting. Thanks.
Wow. Now you know what you did wrong. We hope you won't do that again in the future.
I just wanted to quickly say there's going to be a message of necessity coming possibly tomorrow because communications would like to add more money to the agency that did the telephone town hall so that they can do the same thing for ARPA funds.
Which I think ties in with the additional question that Councilmember Martin had for the administration after that meeting. So,
yes.
All right. All right. So if we're ready, we'll start going through the agenda. The agenda being for the City Council meeting to be held on April 12th. Finance introductory number 119 is the first item, which is Kivo Microfunds contract amendment. This item extends the agreement from 6 months to 3 years. It increases compensation by $60,000 to $65,000. Are there any questions on this introductory item?
I'd like to know if there's any anticipated goals for the expansion in terms of number of businesses, number of dollars, whatever the goals may be set.
Do we have any other questions on introductory 119? Hearing no more questions, we'll go to finance introductory number 120, the cancellation or refund of erroneous taxes and charges. This correction includes an erroneous water charge of more than 9 million gallons due to a transposition of numbers. Are there any questions on introductory 120?
I'll just state very quickly that well, you all saw the notes, I suppose, but Commissioner Perrin came to the to our meeting and explained that this was a hand error, that some of the technology that has since been purchased is going to prevent this from happening again. And it was never brought up by the homeowner. So it's just being acknowledged now and dealt with now. But it was a hand error that shouldn't happen again.
Any questions on this introductory number? All right, we'll move to introductory number 121 for finance. The Rochester Housing Authority salary range increases. This largely pertains to collective bargaining unit, but also includes non-bargaining unit titles.
I just have a question about where we are in terms of benchmarking for compared to other cities.
There's also a huge salary gap between the CEO per se and other members of the representing collective bargaining units. So I would like to hear some justification for those gaps. I do think the work everyone does within the housing authority is valuable. So I would just like to hear more about how the gaps are justified.
Are there any other questions on this introductory number?
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead, Kim.
All right, just two clarifying questions, and that's about the salary ranges, and this is from entry level to max salary, or is this a jump? And when would this go into effect?
Okay. Are there any other
James?
questions on this? So, go
Yeah,
ahead.
the one question I want to ask is if the RHA can provide some type of explanation of their current staffing challenges or gaps or what what their big needs are. And Josanne, I don't know if you saw my note, but I would advise that someone from, I mean, depending on how the responses we get from RHA on this are, I would advise that someone's available to have a conversation during the committee meeting if that's possible.
Yes, I'll make sure that happens.
Thanks.
Are there any additional questions on this introductory number? Hearing none, we'll go to finance introductory number 122. Budget amendment, race funds, review of city job specifications. This takes $20,000 and distributes it to DHRM for hiring one position full-time under the race implementation funding. Are there any questions on this item?
Yes, I have a question. Now, the 20K is going to be added to in-kind fund, or is that the actual annual salary that the full-time employee will be making?
So this position would end at the end of our budget year. So I believe it would be full-time. It's just discounted given that the position would end at the end of June.
Oh, good. I was a little nervous about that.
Yeah, it's just the prorated amount for the end of the fiscal year.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Is this position expected to be funded again in the next fiscal year?
Yeah, that's confirmed. That's in the notes from the finance meeting.
Are there any other questions on number 122?
Just to confirm, that means that this person will make about $7,000 per month?
I assume fringe is included in there as well, but we can find that out.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see what their salary is when we get the budget, I suppose, for this year, but that sounds about right.
Are there any other questions on number 122? If not, we'll move to finance introductory number 143. Memorandum of Agreement, Rochester City School District Pillars of Hope Program. The Pillars program has been on hold due to COVID, and this legislation puts it back on track through 2025. Are there any questions on number 143? All right, if there's no questions, we'll move to introductory number 144, budget amendment for the Rochester Public Library. It pertains to bids received for the Lincoln Branch Library on Joseph Avenue. Those bids were over budget, and this would move $500,000 from the library fund balance to allow the project to move ahead. Are there any questions on this introductory? Hearing none, we'll move to neighborhood and business development introductory number 123, sale of real estate and grant agreement, Flower City Habitat for Humanity. This introductory includes a sale of 7 parcels of city-owned real estate and authorizes a grant of $175,000 of home funds. Any questions on number 123?
I have
Just
some
a-
questions. Oh, go ahead.
Just a timeline for when things are going to be fully completed, given all the pressures of building right now.
Any other questions?
Yes. So I wanted to know what exactly is the documented area median income that they were basing this on? And in the list of criteria, I didn't see anything about credit score and how that would impact the decision-making. And is there a way to get more specific information regarding the amount of the down payment and the closing costs? And the next two were simple, like what is SEQRA and NEPA?
Are there any other questions on number 123? If not, we'll go to Neighborhood and Business Development Introduction number 124, East Avenue / Alexander Street Entertainment District Local Improvement Ordinance. This is the yearly establishment of special assessments to the East Avenue Alexander Street Local Improvement District. Are there any questions?
Is participation voluntary?
Are there any other questions? Hearing no other questions, we'll go to Neighborhood and Business Development Introductory number 125, South Avenue, Alexander Street Open Space District Local Improvement Ordinance, establishing $8,900 of total budget for maintenance for the public space at 62 Alexander Street, and $8,900 is maximum compensation for an agreement with Swan. Are there any questions on this introduction? If there are no questions, we'll go to Neighborhood and Business Development Introductory number 126, High Falls Business Improvement District Annual Budget. This is to approve the annual budget of $25,000, establish a $25,000 assessment, and authorize $25,000 as maximum compensation for the High Falls Business Improvement District Management Association. Are there any questions?
Just one general question, not pertaining to this particular bid, but just could we get a list of the number of bids throughout the city of Rochester?
Are there any other questions on 126? Hearing none, we'll go to NBD Introductory 127, Substantial Amendment Annual Action Plan Business Development Program. This is to authorize a substantial amendment to the 2021-2022 action plan to reduce the budget for Project 1 by $100,000 and increase the budget of Project 2 by $100,000, and also to rename the Small Business Matching Grant Program to the Small Business Grant. Are there any questions on this introductory?
Yes, can we access a list of the businesses who have received support from this program? And I know there's a plan to make it more accessible for other businesses. So how are they being targeted? How do businesses learn about this?
Now add a question on that. How does this interface with Redco?
Are there any other questions on number 127?
Yeah, I do have, sorry, go ahead.
I go ahead, Mitch. I'm gonna think more about how to phrase my question.
Okay, I'd like to understand what the plan is to build synergy between this program from CDBG and the program that we've used for both with CARES dollars and plan to use for ARPA dollars. So James, you could, whatever way you want to think of how to ask that question is great, but what I'm trying to get at, maybe another way of looking at it, is what is the experience for the applicant? Are they being told, sorry, we're out of funding in one bucket, apply later for funding in the other? Because I want to make sure that we're trying to create a seamless experience for the actual applicant.
So maybe, Mitch, are you asking, is it considered, or is there a unified funding application for those three different areas that would allow one application and yet potentially access to all the different funds?
Sure, that'd be great. Yeah. And then just one other more explicit question is if there's any limitations on the type of.
I didn't hear all of it.
No, you cut out.
If there's any limitations on the type of business that can apply? Is that better?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I can let you know, there is a list on the city site for this that tells you exactly what businesses do qualify. But it'd be good for everybody to get that list.
And was there another question? Councilman
Yeah.
Lupien?
Yes. So it says eliminating the matching requirement for businesses located within low to moderate income areas. But when you look at the map, that's all of Rochester. And there are definitely some businesses within that area that I would not consider like a low to moderate income owner. And so I'm wondering how can we better tailor this to target with that added benefit owners who are themselves low to moderate income, and not, give kind of a break to a business that has more than enough resources.
My suspicion is that because it's CDBG money, that you have to use a designated area. That's been one of the past criteria, but we'll definitely look into that and see if that is the case, and if not, whether some other criteria could be used.
Does it have to be LMI? Can it be just low income? Yeah, I'm interested in what are the other options.
Are there any more questions on NBD introductory 127? If there's no more questions, we'll go to NBD introductory number 128. Agreement, the Housing Council at Pathstone Property Ownership Readiness Program, establishing $200,000 as a maximum compensation for an agreement with the Housing Council at Pathstone. Are there any questions on number 128?
Yes, I have two questions. Sounds like a great idea, but I always worry about eligibility. And so $64,000, even for a family of four, seems a bit high to me. And it says that they will consider lower incomes, and I'd like them to be more specific in what they mean by considering lower incomes. And Intro 123 gave some specific selling criteria, and I wanted to know if they could do the same here.
Okay. Are there any other questions on introductory number 128?
Yes, I have a question on, this is gonna be a tough question, I guess. Why are we still prioritizing female-headed Black and brown households?
Can you repeat that question? Yeah.
Sure. I would think after what we've seen over the past 60 years with the welfare system, that prioritizing female-headed households was a negative thing, where they would choose not to get married. It would kind of hurt the overall Black and brown family dynamic. So I'm just asking what the mentality behind that is.
Administration certainly could answer that for you from their perspective, but I can tell you that as part of the Housing Trust Fund work, that became a high priority population to target for home ownership.
I think there's also a majority of renters that are women of color, head of household, if I'm not mistaken.
And I believe the data points to all of that in the 2034 comprehensive plan and the market study.
I completely understand all of that. I'm just saying that we also know that that household is usually the poorest, and we seem to be incentivizing that, is what I mean.
How are we incentivizing it?
Yeah, thank you.
Neither time nor a place for that conversation.
I
If you
would
say so.
love to ask a totally different question, if that's okay.
Certainly.
Can we get an update from the administration on the current status of first-time home buyer programs that actually offer financial incentives and assistance? I know that they kind of seem to come and go quite often, but when they're here, they're very popular. Love to hear what's available now and if there's any plans for more to come from public or private funding.
Okay. Are there any other questions on introductory number 128? If not, we'll go to NBD introductory number 129. Waterline easement acquisitions, 51 Holland Street, for the acquisition of 3 permanent easements by negotiation with the property 51 Holland Street. Questions? If there's no questions, we'll go to Parks and Public Works introductory numbers 130 and 131. Grant acceptance, New York State Office of Parks, Recreation and Historic Preservation Environmental Protection Fund grant program for Rochester Waterworks building renovation and gorge vertical access at High Falls Phase 1, which authorizes the mayor to enter an agreement with New York State Office of Parks, Recreation and Historic Preservation, and also authorizes the receipt and use of grant funds in the amount of $500,000. Any questions on 130 and 131? There are no questions. We'll go to Parks and Public Works introductory.
I'm sorry, I was trying to be polite, but I do actually have a question.
Yeah, sure.
What is the status? What will happen to the existing visitor center? And who will operate this new visitor center?
And I have a general question that will apply to everything High Falls State Park area, which is, what is the plan for remediation and contamination? I'll keep asking that question every time we talk about it.
So that'll be good for the administration to note that, Joanne, that question is going to come up on all of the issues related to this park. Are there any other questions?
Yeah, I'm curious, it's not quite related to this particular item, but what's the status on the High Falls Overlook project?
Okay, are there any other questions? No one wants to know the status of the zip line? No one?
Throw it in there.
Because I do. I want to know.
I think I covered that in my notes, James. It will be in status 3. It will be in phase 3 that they'll consider it.
Maybe we can encourage that moving up, but that's if there's no other questions. We'll go to introductory number 132 and 133. The 2024 Preventive Maintenance Project, State Street, Interloop to Lyle Avenue, Exchange Boulevard, Ford Street to Basin Street, and Ford Street, South Plymouth Avenue to Ford Street Bridge. authorizes an agreement with DOT to appropriate almost $450,000 in anticipated reimbursements from the Federal Highway Administration and to appropriate $111,000+ from 2021, 2022 cash capital. Are there any questions on introductory numbers 132, 133? Hearing none, we'll go to Parks and Public Works, introduction number 134, Genesee Street Reconstruction Project from Elmwood Avenue to Brooks Avenue. Again, authorizing an agreement with New York State DOT, authorizing the city to compensate DOT for a maximum amount of $400 for right-of-way incidental services, and also to amend section 2 of the ordinance number 2021-320 to decrease the anticipated federal aid reimbursements from $562,000+ to $560,000. Are there any questions on introductory number 134? If not, we'll look at introductory number 135, 2021 Annual Action Plan, Consolidated Community Development Plan, Dry's Play Apparatus Bronson Avenue Playground, which authorizes the appropriation of $1,400,000 of CDBG funds from the 2021-22 Annual Action Plan to also establishing $75,000 as maximum compensation for a professional services agreement with Robbie Engineering in order to engineer the playground and other play apparatus changes. Any questions on introductory 135?
Just one question. This is exciting, but I'd like to get a sense of the number of play apparatuses that we anticipate, or maybe a list of play apparatuses that we anticipate upgrading this year.
President Melendez, we do typically, it's a good question to ask. I'm just letting you know that we do typically get a feel for that in CIP.
You're right. So maybe I can go back to that and look again, but be helpful to know if there's any changes at front target.
They pointed out in the PPW meeting that they have a list ongoing of the parks the playgrounds that need updating. And so there may be more that are on the need/wish list than will be done this year. In case that's of interest to you, President Melendez, that may be more than what we see in the CIP, because they said this one had been on the list for several years.
It might be of interest to council to see that list and also how that list is prioritized for which projects are the ones that will be done next.
Mhm. Does this include spray parks?
Don't believe so. We can find that out. If there's no more questions on introductory 135, we'll go to PPW introductory 136.
Actually, James, I have one more on 135.
Yep.
And it's a very minor one, but I'm curious as to why it's still called the Bronson Avenue Playground when Bronson Avenue was changed to Samuel McCree Avenue many years ago. So I'm just from a logistics perspective, I'm curious about the mechanics there. Sorry, did I cut out?
No, we will have to check. Just a suspicion might be that park is actually named and it was never changed. So I don't know, but we'll have to look into that. It's a great question.
Yeah, just curious. Thank you.
PPW introductory number 136, local improvement ordinance, street lighting enhancement special assessment districts. And this is establishing the 2022-23 budgets for street lighting enhancement special assessment districts as noted in the table in the introductory. Are there any questions on 136? If not, we'll go to introduction number 137, which is an intermunicipal agreement with the Village of Fairport Ash Tree Pesticide Application Treatment Services. And this will establish an agreement with the Village of Fairport to have the city provide pesticide application services to get rid of ash borers in 70 ash trees located in the Village of Fairport. A nice intermunicipal cooperative agreement. City forestry kicking a little ash out there. Any questions on number 137? I used that joke earlier and Katie challenged me to use it again, so I'm sorry, blame Katie.
That was
Very bad joke. PPW introduction number 138, care and embellishment of street malls. It's sort of an annual occurrence, this legislation authorizing the care and embellishment of street malls and associated costs, $35,225. And you can see the breakdown in the table of the different street malls. Any questions on number 138?
Just one question. All streets with street malls, do they have such an agreement, or is this based on the neighbors deciding they're going to go in on it together?
It's certain street malls. That was a question during the PPW review. Only
Sorry.
certain ones that they decided to have additional things on their street mall. But still asking, obviously.
If it's in the notes, we can scratch it. Yeah.
And simply, what constitutes a street mall?
So it's a street that has a median in the middle, like a grassy median. One that comes to mind is Oxford Street, especially because the magnolias are going to be out soon. You can, there's all those magnolia bushes down the middle. It's sort of that type of a layout, Councilmember Smith.
Central Park is another one that is on the other side that's not an agreement in here because they just have regular grass and it's mowed by the city just ordinarily.
Thank you.
Mhm.
All right, any other questions? If not, we're going to move to Recreation and Human Services Committee, introduction number 139, Public Market Snow Removal and Security Services, which is authorizing appropriations and assessments for snow removal and security services at our very popular public market. Questions on that?
Is security provided by only RPD, or is there another agency that is contracted to provide security services at the public market?
I know city security does do some of that, and I'm not sure if there's another agency contract, which we can find that out. We'll get an answer to that question.
I think it might be AP security, but I think we should ask.
Any other questions on 139? If not, we'll go to number 140, introduction number 140, which is an agreement for veterinary services for Rochester Animal Services. And this establishes $2,800 as maximum compensation for a veterinary services agreement with Louis DeVincenti Jr., Doctor of Veterinary Medicine. Also, it's going to use $2,800 in donations to pay for this.
Just one question, James.
Yep.
If there's something that this particular veterinarian provides that our own in-house veterinarian does not, or if this is just to complement services or supplement, I guess.
We'll find that out. I will share with council, though, that one of the last things I dealt with on the administration side actually was in animal services. It is very difficult to get veterinary services right now and to recruit veterinarians and also vet techs. So I'm not sure this, my suspicion is that this may be to help with that because it's just very hard to come by those services. But we'll get an answer to that for sure.
Yeah, that's part of the reason why I want to ask the question, because I know that we're also in the middle of trying to hire for a vet. So we may need to try different things and try harder.
Any other questions on number 140? If not, we can go to Recreation and Human Services Introductory 141, which is agreements, cities for financial empowerment fund, summer jobs connect grant. And this authorizes an agreement in the amount of $70,000. It also amends the budget of the Department of Recreation and Human Services by $20,000. It authorizes $5,000 as maximum annual compensation with Consumer Credit Services, authorizes $6,000 as maximum annual compensation with Rochester Works. Are there any questions on introductory 141?
Will every summer youth participant therefore receive some type of financial coaching? Is it, in other words, is it baked into the program for every participant?
I thought I heard the mayor say that at one point, but we will find an answer out to that question.
I know in previous years, it's largely been kind of dependent upon the contractor, the employer to provide some of that. So be good to know if that's expected, if that's the service the city is now going to provide.
Are there any other questions on introductory 141? If not, we'll go to introductory number 142, Agreement Coordinator Care Services, Parent Leadership Training Institute, which is established as $10,000 as a maximum annual compensation with CCSI, and the term will be September 21 through the remainder of this fiscal year. Okay, hearing no questions, that's the last item that I have.
Okay. Well, that concludes our session today then. Meeting's adjourned. Thanks, everyone.
Take care, everyone.